the other side. What you're about to see is the document that we road test and beta test. It's called a piano vocal score. And what it contains is every word in the show, sung by every one of the singers in the show. But it does not include yet any of the instruments. It does not include anything but the barest of stage directions. No sense yet of the colors and the apparitions of the show. This is the bare bones how you start with a piano vocal score. 8 months from now, it will be a full score with orchestral parts and vocal parts. And then, of course, there will be the stage director's version of the same document. And all of your people will have their own cue sheets and everything else that they go with, and the lighting plots and all of those things. Our show will have super titles, even though we're obviously in English. English is a very difficult language to convey in the opera house. It's not inherently friendly with long Italian vowels. Sometimes it's not much better than the sound of dogs barking. And so we use titles, even though it's an English house. So feel free to look at the document you're now examining. And let me discuss a couple of more things that we have to deal with very happily as we create an opera about a real person come back to life 100 years later. I mentioned the let me also mention the ways in which an opera company has to sell itself. And starting on January 15, tickets will go on sale. We will be promoting the piece very heavily. Just yesterday, we filmed a PSA with Margaret. Bramwell Toby, a great friend of our company, the conductor of the Vancouver Symphony, is doing a promo for us, as is a certain well-known hockey player with an Italian last name. And you will see, beginning on January 15, the rollout of a series of PSAs saying, hello, I'm so-and-so, and I'm going to City Opera's production of Pauline on May 23rd, and I hope to see you there, etc. And we have to do all of those things times 100 to build an audience, because we are well aware that opera, by and large, has a not good reputation with Mr. and Mrs. Rabbit. It's believed to be the property of rich, elderly, white ladies with blue hair and blue veins. And this kills us. It kills us. Opera is a glorious art form. It belongs to everybody. It is a commonwealth of human experience and sound and joy and fear and delight. Opera belongs to everybody, but we're well aware of the image that it has with some people. And as do our colleagues at Vancouver Opera, Jim Wright, General Director there, we also work like dogs to try to undermine that false image and tell people what we really do, which is through music tell stories, through theater create persons, through the predominance of wit and imagination and sound create a circumstance that you couldn't find anywhere else. And come on in, you're welcome. We're very pleased to do this, but it too is a good deal of work. And then comes opening night. And I hope you will all come. Because it is, and I've, as I said, been doing this for 30 years, one of the most frightening and enchanting experiences you will ever have in your life to give to the world for the very first time a brand new opera. And you don't really, even though you've tested everything and you've been at Carnegie and other places, you don't really have a clue what the audience will do. Not a clue. And even if you pack opening night with all of your friends and you get them drunk, you don't know for sure how it will go over. For myself as a conductor, the single most exciting and electrifying moment is when I walk into the pit and I hear the tuning A, usually given by the oboe. That, for me, in my trade, is absolutely animating and thrilling a moment. For singers, what is it? The first moment when you go on stage.
I think when you hear the overture usually starting off, you start going, this is it. This is it. And then the curtains open or rise, whatever it may be, and there you are. And it's just so exciting feeling the energies of the audience. That's what really drives you. That's what gives you the energy to perform, is the energy of the audience. So that's what we do it for.
Tobin, this is your 5th new opera. For you, the most exciting moment come premiere.
Well, I think the best moment is the scariest moment is when you first put everything together with the orchestra and everything. That's when I start throwing up. But by the time it's opening night, I can be an audience member and just enjoy, just be in the audience and look around and see how people react. It's the best thing.
And for you, Norman, opening night, will you be vomiting or will you be?
I'll probably be vomiting. I like the feeling in the room. Rosanna was talking about the energy, when the people are talking and there's all that feeling before the curtain is actually open or rise, as the case may be. That energy of people that are there, and there is an extraordinary excitement and a sense of anticipation. And I think actually a certain kind of, I think for the good human beings who are in the audience, a certain kind of apprehension too, a kind of sort of, not fear, but this anticipation about what they don't know and what might happen, the unknown, for the new year. Yeah.
You hear and see, do you not, the very mixed feelings, all animated by great visceral excitement and tremendous anxiety. I keep my car running outside.
I take city transit.
Thank God the buses in Vancouver run 24. So you've listened to us very kindly and patiently for the last hour. We'd like to listen to you now. Any questions or fair game? Steve raised his hand first.
Thank you very much for your presentation and the ensemble ahead of us. I wanted to ask in regards to her heritage of Mohawk and English, is there any way of us knowing within the piece, how can we see that she's Mohawk and English? Will that be conveyed somehow through language?
And perhaps Norman could answer, Steve.
I'm not sure in the case of language. Certainly her words are being respected, as Tobin said, they're often actually woven into the libretto. It's certainly something being wrestled with by the set designer and visual designer, Marianne Nicholson, who lives out of Victoria, and her colleague, Lindsay, who are both First Nations. One is Mohawk and one is, as I mentioned earlier, Tukwak. They're wrestling with that question of how to represent her heritage. I think the wampum is becoming a very, very key notion for them. At the same time, there is a lot going on in an opera with music and words and people on stage and such, trying to find the right balance between providing background or context without, at the same time, not acting in competition with and such. I think color is going to, from what a little bit that Lindsay talked about yesterday, that color is going to play a big role. But we're at really the very sort of beginnings of that conversation of how to properly express it or to represent it or honor it and such. Yeah, we're just at the very, very beginning of that. Costume-wise, there are a couple of elements. One is the period costume, and for a number of the performers. They play multiple characters, so that's a bit of a challenge. There's also Pauline's performance costume that she created, which is part based on truth and part good showmanship. And I think Charles can actually speak articulate about this, the number of pieces of actually her own clothing and such that are actually kept in the Vancouver Museum. There's many of her own artifacts that are housed or curated in the museum there. So I think that's certainly honoring in how she processed her heritage as an active performance. That's going to be in the show. And then one other element is her grandfather, John Smoke, who was a very legendary figure, both in First Nations communities, but also for the British, because he fought in the War of 1812 and such. And that was a big conversation today with Mara Gobler, who's the costume designer, fantastic costume designer, extraordinary, meticulous researcher, and for her.